future mystery. This moment is the gift. Every second.
Every second that we're together, Miracle Makers, is a gift. And it's Dr. Sarah Larsen, Greg Larsen, and Tyler Larsen in studio for you. Woo! Woo! We are bringing to you one of she is such a bright light in the world. She is someone that I've met and fallen in love with. I met her at Conscious Life Expo. Greg met her the first year and was so in love with her, said, we've got to bring Susan Shumsky on. We love her so much. Woo-hoo! Greg met you the first year. And then we met again the second year, and we've been wanting to get you on the show. And it's such a pleasure for us to have you, Susan. Welcome to Miracle Makers.
Thank you so much. It's my great pleasure to be here with you.
Susan, there's so much about you that I could share. You've been doing the spiritual, the grounding work, the humanitarian work, all of what the law of attraction work, the secret work. We could label it in so many ways because in modern times, there's so many different ways it's being labeled now. You've been doing this for many years. I would say since a child. This has been your primary focus. You've written several books. You've been a best-selling author. You've done so much. And reading your bio would take the whole time for us. I would love for you to highlight so beautifully about yourself, just a little bit about the beginning of your journey. And the world has advanced to where you started out is a good way for me to say that, is you came in with such a high awareness and began sharing it out there. And that was your primary goal early on. And so I'd love for you to tell us about yourself, darling.
I've been practicing spiritual disciplines for 50 years. Yes, I really am 69 years old for those who are calculating.
Wow.
And I spent 22 years in the ashram of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He was the guru of the Beatles and the guru of Deepak Chopra. And continued in my spiritual studies after I left his ashram. I've written 14 books. I have 14 books in print. And I teach spiritual disciplines such as meditation, prayer, healing, spiritual healing, and so on.
It's so beautiful. Tyler's the first one to try. Go ahead, Tyler.
It sounds like you know a lot about it if you've been doing it for 50 years and the other thing for 22.
Yes, doesn't that? Yes.
Yeah.
I've had quite a bit of experience with meditation and also a lot of experience with prayer and affirmation. So yeah, I've been doing it for a long time.
It's so beautiful and I would say the work that you've been doing is noticing your thoughts, noticing how you relate to the environment at an early age, self-mastery, and going above self-mastery. On Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there are the basic core needs, and then there are the relationship needs, and then there are the self needs that we get to when all of the core is taken care of. And above that is this area that you worked on for the last 50 years. What's above self-awareness and self-mastery? And then have developed a roadmap in books for others on how to get there.
Well, we call it the higher self. Higher self is, we might say, above or beyond this ego self that we think we are. So who we really are is very different from who we think we are. Who we really are is a unlimited divine being with great power, with great joy, always in the light, always free, unbounded, unlimited. But who we think we are is this limited being who has this history who has this bank account, who has this job. We think of ourselves in a very mundane way, but that's not who we really are.
It's so, so beautiful. And so there's so much we want to learn from you. And in particular, this show, we want to talk about the third eye as well. And because when you really begin to see with awakened third eye, you experience things differently in the world. And so I'd love for you to describe what is the third eye and what is it when it's awakened?
Mm-hmm. So if we want to talk about the third eye, first we have to talk about prana. Prana is life force energy. In China, they call it chi. In India, they call it prana. In Japan, they call it ki. And this life force energy is flowing through your subtle body. Your subtle body is filled with this life force energy flowing through it in specific conduits called nadi. And nadi are like energy tubes through which this subtle energy flows. If you were to dissect a corpse, you would not find prana, you would not find a nadi, because it's on a different dimension. It's on a subtle level.
And nadis are also something we could call meridians in Chinese medicine. The nadis are the meridians, and it's so beautiful because we have access to them with our skin. We have access to the nadis. We have access to feeling them. They're when you have goosebumps or a sensation that's in a region, you're connecting to those nadis a little bit. Tyler, go ahead.
It sounds like a new species. Like humans,
humans and the nadis and the meridians. Yes. Beautiful, Susan. Thank you. So I think it's so beautiful to have language for these places within us that have been written about or studied in China and India and various cultures, even the Native Americans, chi, prana, and nadis and the meridians, to have language for that. Go ahead.
So when many nadi come together and intersect in a plexus, then we have what's called a chakra. Chakra means wheel in Sanskrit. And so we have the 7 major chakras, and we have 7 other chakras that are talked about in the ancient scriptures of India. And one of those chakras is called the Yah Chakra, otherwise known as the third eye. And that chakra is located near the pineal gland area in the middle of the brain. So that chakra is very important because it is about spiritual illumination. And it's called the third eye because we see through our 2 eyes, we see the world, we see all of the glories of this beautiful physical creation. But with our third eye, we see beyond this physical creation. We see into subtle areas. We see into the subtle body. We see into the subtle cosmos. We can see much more through the third eye. It's also the seat of intuition or insight. So when we develop the third eye, we're developing our intuition, our insight, our clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient abilities.
That's so beautiful. So the Anja, third eye. And there's multiple sensations that you can feel. The chakra system being a way in which we can take the spirit world and our mental and emotional world and bring it into the physical world. The nervous system, through so much of the work that we have now, shows that we have these organs and nerve bundles that correspond to the feelings. And when we have a feeling or an emotion or a thought, we can now track that back to the chakra system that it's associated with. We can see it light up the brain. And the third eye, when we're in the frontal, the neocortex zones, I love that we have, it was coined a little while ago, the angel lobes become available. The angel lobes are the lobes that are utilized during the third eye. And it's such a beautiful space. Those that practice compassion, self-love, love for an environment, the higher thought, but those things associated with the higher self, that region, it receives more blood flow and you're able to see more. We've got about 50 years worth of research in neurobiological science going to this region of the brain, going to this chakra, now showing evidence of how to light up our intuition. And I call it the Angel Lobes, because of the scientists that I was studying with that, the along with the Ajna chakra. And I love that you've been practicing it for 50 years. We can talk about it. We can learn about it. But to actually be in an active practice and to write about it so that others can understand is quite beautiful. So I'd love for you to share why it's important to spend time on connecting with the divine revelations, this third eye in this space.
Well, if we want to develop our clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient abilities, then meditating with and developing the third eye helps us to have that experience. But more importantly, we want to realize who we really are. That really is the purpose of human life, is to realize our true divine nature, our true self, which is our higher self. So through meditation, we can do that. We can have the direct experience of our inner divine nature, which is unlimited and unbounded, which is beauteous, which is filled with light, filled with wellness, well-being, health, filled with happiness and glory, and that's who we really are. So if we can experience that directly, then we realize our true self. And as I said, that's the purpose of human life.
So that's so beautiful. Through connecting with your intuition and connecting with your third eye, you can fully realize who you are and the experience. I love it also because it filters out the noise. Not only does it let you know what you are, but it also lets you let go of what you no longer are. What you believe you are, miracle makers, you basically cover up the self-realized part. It's a process of removing what isn't you. So when you focus on what is you, you focus on these nadis, you focus on these chakras, you focus on this intuition, you filter out the noise and you let go of what your parents might have believed you are, what society believes, or all of the other noise, collective noise that we've created to fully realize and connect to yourself. And so I love this conversation so much. So this is so beautiful. Tyler, go ahead, baby.
So it's like now we're like in a crowded room and we don't know what we're doing there. And then when we get the third eye, we figure it out and all the noise goes away and then it's clear.
That is a great...
Well, actually, that clarity, that place of perfect silence is beyond all chakras, beyond all nadis, but beyond anything in the subtle or the physical realm. Unbounded consciousness, awareness is beyond all of these things, Tyler. So it is your true self, which is unlimited and which has no phenomena attached to it. It's beyond the phenomenal world. It's the unmanifest, pure, absolute consciousness, which is silent, which is unbounded, and which is unlimited, and which is an experience of deep relaxation, perfect peace, perfect wholeness, perfect oneness, and infinite bliss.
That's so beautiful. The infinite bliss. how did you find yourself in India at a young age in this in this space when, today we can Google something and want a result and find where to get there.
Yeah.
How did you get to India? From, I think you were in Oregon, or is that Southern or Northern California as a child, and then in India? Back then we didn't have, you couldn't even look it up in a phone book.
Yeah, well, you certainly couldn't look up meditation or yoga in the phone book, I'll tell you that much. It was the 1960s. I was a hippie. I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area at the time. I was going to art college, and I was a flower child. Those of us who were flower children during that era, we were very serious about our spiritual development. We wanted to experience higher states of consciousness. We wanted to experience nirvana. And I was reading a lot of books about that. I was reading Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. I was reading The Way of Zen by Alan Watts and other books by Alan Watts. I was reading the Dhammapada and other scriptures, many Buddhist scriptures. So I was just consuming all these books to find out as much as I could about higher consciousness. And in Alan Watts' books, he said that you have to find what's called a meditation guide. So a meditation guide is the way that you would learn how to meditate and how to experience these higher states of consciousness. Well, you didn't look up meditation guide in the yellow pages either. It didn't exist. So I asked a roommate where I was living in Berkeley at the time, well, how do I find this meditation guide? He said, well, have you ever tried to meditate by yourself? And I said, well, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I lay down on my bed. I was so clueless that I didn't even know that you're supposed to sit up when you meditate. So I lay down on the bed and I asked for a quote unquote meditation. Immediately, I was propelled into this ecstatic state. I could feel this cord or rush of energy rushing from the tips of my toes all the way to the top of my head. And I felt like I was plugged into a cosmic electric socket, but in the most ecstatic way. And this energy was flowing and flowing and flowing through my body. And I figured, well, I guess this is meditation. Little did I know that I had my first meditation experience and also Kundalini awakening all at the same time. So it was not too long after that a friend took me to the Transcendental Meditation Center in Berkeley. And it was just a center. There weren't any teachers there or anything, but I immediately fell in love with the picture of the guru that was on the wall. It was Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And I had to wait about 9 months before I could learn meditation, but finally I did learn, and I was completely enchanted by meditation and by the experiences I was having. I was having amazing experiences. I really felt like I had attained what I had been seeking for so long, this whole idea of nirvana and all that. So 3 years after that, I was on the banks of the Ganges River in Rishikesh with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and I spent 6 months with him at that time. And then I spent 22 years in his ashrams, his various ashrams throughout the world.
That's so extraordinary. It's such a beautiful journey and story to be on. And this is someone, how would you describe being with him? What was that like?
Well, it was complete bliss when I was in the ashram those first 6 months. It was completely amazing. I was experiencing expanded consciousness. I was sort of in love with life, in love with everything around me. I felt like I was in paradise. Let's just put it that way.
He is no longer with us in the physical form. Mm-hmm. And so many are learning about him now and other yogis. And what would you say about him for those that want to know him? What was the essence? What was that energy that came, your connection to him now and during that time?
Well, he was an extraordinary human being. He was not like the rest of us. He had a charismatic aura. In my case, I really couldn't stop staring at him. the energy that exuded from him was so powerful and so much love. It was just tremendous waves of love and waves of bliss that exuded from his energy field. And when you were around him, you felt like you were in a timeless place, a timeless, spaceless place. You went beyond this physical realm and experienced a kind of unbounded awareness just by being in his presence. And they talk about that in India. They call it darshan, or the sight. Darshan means sight in Sanskrit. The sight that comes from being in the presence of an enlightened being, the energy that comes from that presence. So people experience this amazing energy exuding from him and from other enlightened beings. He was very strong, though. I've met a lot of spiritual masters because I've gone to the Kumbh Mela, which is a huge spiritual fair that happens every 12 years in India. And I've gone there many times and I met many, many saints. And I have to say that Maharishi really exceeds many of them in my opinion, although I've met some amazing saints, also some other ones that are really fantastic. But Maharishi really, he was quite strong. He had a very, very powerful energy field.
It's amazing because back then for the Beatles and for all of, he came to the West Coast and was here in Los Angeles, and the Kumbh Mela, and I just want to break some of this stuff down for the miracle makers. The Kumbh Mela is, I think, millions of naked saints, Nanga Babas, come and sort of mastermind, connect, hang out with each other and amplify prayers in the field. And they highlight for each other some of the things that have been, it's every 12 years and then every 4 years there's little mini ones in India. But it's a site. I haven't been there yet. I've only seen pictures. I went to med school in India, and we talk about it there quite extensively, where you can even feel it when the Kumbh Mela is happening. Baby, I know you want to, you're giving me, okay.
No, I'm just listening. This is all fascinating.
Yeah, but it's so beautiful to, and for a lot of people, what we're talking about in this area, like the Kundalini awakening, darshan, all of these terms, meditation is a reach for a lot of people. Chakra systems, even though it's been talked about quite extensively, there's so much. Each guru, each teacher, each person shares it in a different way. And when you're ready, Miracle Maker, it appears to you in the form that's necessary because you've done the inner work or the inner intention, just like Dr. Susan Shumsky sat on or laid on the edge of the bed and really intentioned, what's meditation, or let me experience this thing. Her intention was so strong that not only did she meditate, but she had a Kundalini awakening. And we'll describe what that is for you. And will you describe what you experienced in the Kundalini awakening?
Well, as I mentioned, I felt this cord of energy rushing from the tips of my toes to the top of my head, but that's not necessarily the way that everybody is going to experience Kundalini awakening. What Kundalini is, it's a special spiritual energy, and it goes through one of those nadis that we talked about. We talked about that there are thousands of nadis in our subtle body. There's one special nadi, it's called Sushumna nadi, and it runs from the base of your spine above all the way through your body, through the midline of your body, all the way up through the top of your head. And Sushumna nadi is the only nadi through which Kundalini flows. Kundalini is generally asleep. In the ancient scriptures of India, it's described as asleep with head down. It's described as 3.5 coils around the Shiva Linga with head down. That's how it's called in the ancient scriptures. That means it's asleep. So in average people, Kundalini is just lying dormant near the base chakra at the base of the spine. But anyone who has any intuitive abilities, anyone who experiences any subtle awareness, anyone, in fact, who is intellectually inclined, anyone whose interest is higher than just base human desires and passions, they have their kundalini open or awakened to some degree.
And
Now, that the lower end of the Sushumna Nadi, of that cord or that conduit, is generally closed off. But through spiritual practices, it will open, and then Sushumna will flow into that and flow up through the midline of the body, up through the spinal column, up through the nervous system, up through the top of the head. So the Sushumna Nadi is very important, and that kundalini going up through the Sushumna Nadi awakens our clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient abilities. It awakens higher awareness, and we become more and more enlightened, more and more aware.
it's so beautiful because Greg and I have both done we went through a process, and it was quite in a course where we worked on that and we learned. And it's what really sticks out for me within the Kundalini awakening. It is never happens the same for two people. Each person experiences it for themselves in such a beautiful way. And I believe that you can come into this life with your Kundalini awakened already. And I believe our son had that experience of coming in with it. He was communicating and our daughter as well, at a young age with the elements. And slowly over time, it's interesting to remind them of that and to hold the energy field with them. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit about someone who might be going through a Kundalini awakening right now, what they might be experiencing. And I'd love, because you were a wealth of information, just such a great resource in the higher perspectives, the higher consciousness. You've seen so much from physically being there and helping to co-create some of the conscious workshops and groups and organizations by showing up and helping coach and bring people together in that group. So if there are kids going through, or adults, whatever age, Kundalini awakenings now, what might they be experiencing?
Well, Sarah, it's actually sad because many people have spiritual experiences and they don't understand what's happening. And so it's frightening for them. So they end up in the psychiatrist's office saying, oh, I'm experiencing this and this. And the psychiatrist says, oh, well, you've got some kind of disease.
Yeah.
You have mental illness. You're schizophrenic, or you are bipolar, and they give them these labels when really all they are is spiritual, and they're having spiritual experiences. And that it makes my blood boil. It's so horrid that people who are innocent and who are having wonderful spiritual awakenings, because they're ignorant, because they don't know what those things are, they're frightened and they end up taking these horrible drugs, which of course will quash and quelch their spiritual awakening and their spiritual experiences. So some of these may be experiences of energy flows through the body, or it may be perceptual differences. The world might seem to be brighter, colors brighter. You may even see certain things that a psychiatrist might label as hallucinations, when in fact it's really higher consciousness. Especially with eyes closed, you might see a number of things with your inner eye. You might be hearing things also. You might even be able to communicate with divine beings and receive divine messages. Or you might even be able to hear other people's thoughts. You might be doing some mind reading. And this is so frightening for somebody who doesn't know what it is, because it's not quote unquote normal perception. So it's just terrifying. And then they end up in even a mental hospital. It's so sad. It makes me so sad.
It's what I've witnessed, and this might be in the last 10 years, so many people are reaching out to alternatives because they have understood and witnessed their contemporaries dealing with the Kundalini awakening. So I have quite a few friends that I went to school with, med school with, and quite a few that went into practice that are now, even for themselves, when they went through pregnancy or when they went through the people that I went to med school with, send people and there are quite a few people now that recognize, wow, psychiatry or psychology, there's other options other than that. And I believe a great deal of depression in our world is occurring because people have awakened kundalinis, and they know that if they go to a traditional, if they can't find someone to talk about it with, they might be diagnosed in a manner that limits them in the future. And so that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about getting work like this out there. So miracle makers, if you're hearing or experiencing things such as seeing extra stuff, if you're experiencing sensations in your body and then someone will tell you, oh, I'm experiencing that same thing, you might be an awakened kundalini, you might have that energy in your field, and you're able to give it words and experience it with others. So it becomes very, very important for you to, yes, always have a licensed mental health or other professional that you work with, but also make sure you talk to people that are functioning well in life, that share that they have had these experiences. And those that have had these experiences can help you navigate and reach your potential for why that's happening within you. And I want to talk about your book too. We haven't even hit your book. I'm just so glad that you're here and that we're able to talk about beautifully these symptoms that miracle makers or anyone listening, and if you have someone that's experiencing weird stuff or going through a deep depression and they haven't yet found someone that they can relate to, make sure they hear the show. Make sure you share the show with them so they can possibly awaken and find someone that they can talk to that's already experienced what they're experiencing, and make it easier for them to have higher levels of energy and higher levels of understanding and perspective. I'd love for you guys to chime in as you're listening to this.
I'm just looking for like maybe a practical tool if you're new to this you can use, because these states, I've tasted them in a sense at times, but because of we have 2 kids and we're just always running around, I feel very disconnected, even though I know it's there and even though I've connected it to it before more deeply than I am now. Just like I've had this deep desire now to how do I get back there? When do I? Well, are any tool or tips you might be able to share to allow someone who's very busy in LA traffic with kids, who's got a job and deadlines and projects and all that stuff like that? It's what is a really simple tool for reconnecting?
Okay, so I'm going to give you all a great affirmation that you can use. And it's called the self-authority affirmation. And it can change your life if you use it on a regular basis. It is for people who are having the sense that they're a little bit frazzled, that life is a little chaotic, and they need to center themselves. It also is good for people who are what we call psychic sponges. A psychic sponge is a person who absorbs energy as a sponge absorbs water. So they are going through their day and they're feeling more and more drained by people around them. They're feeling like people are just stealing their energy from them. And as they go through their day, they feel like they're being dragged through the mud, like a mop being dragged through the mud. And then at the end of the day, all they can do is just lie down and they're so exhausted. So this is like a pick-me-up. And it can help people also who have this, what we call psychic sponge syndrome. So the affirmation goes like this. I am in control. I am one with God. I am the only authority in my life. I am divinely protected by the light of my being. I close off my aura and body of light to the lower astral levels of mind, and I open to the spiritual world. Thank you, God, and so it is.
So it
So it is,
is.
yes.
So it is.
We have a meditation practice, and we started that with our children quite extensively. And so thank you so much, because we're going to enjoy this so much. The I am in control. Susan, Dr. Susan, how can we connect with you even more? Do you have sessions that you give, or do you work individually, or is it just when you're at these conferences?
I do work individually with people if they have read either Divine Revelation, excuse me, one moment. If people have read either my book, Divine Revelation, or my book, Awaken Your Divine Intuition, then I'm willing for them to do a private session with me where they have what I call the breakthrough session, which helps them to listen to the still small voice within and to receive divine contact and communication, to be connected to spirit with a capital S. So I do that. You can read a lot from my books, though. I mean, you can actually learn all of it from my books.
That's so beautiful. And I'm so glad. And I love working with people. I didn't know until I went to med school that people didn't see with the third eye. Yeah. It was when I started learning about I was quite surprised. As an Asian woman, we were taught not to ever ask questions. I grew up never asking questions. And it was until med school that I fully realized, oh my God, not everyone sees energy density, auras, as someone speaking. Like, I can literally in my body know if they're telling me the truth or if they're lying. It's a very interesting, as long as I haven't edged God out, which I mean, as long as I'm not in my ego or in attachment, I'm very able to see clearly. And the part that I appreciate most is for me, I can see if you sort of all of the different options that are coming up for you in a short period of time. And if you do this particular thing, this is the road that you wind up taking, or if you do this particular thing or this particular thing. And it has been a journey for me to really welcome sharing that information in a way that works for everyone. I have a profound belief and love of oneness, and remembering how we fit together, or remembering each other. And so I make myself quite available in Miracle. I call them Miracle One-on-One sessions. It's usually an introductory, and hopefully in that introductory, I can put you on a path in that session to being able to make the higher level choices for yourself right there. And so I so appreciate that you do that as well in that oneness. And I really believe everyone has the possibility of living fully connected to Source at all times, fully living in bliss. And when you've moved your energy field into your heart, or fully into your ajna, when you've moved it into your third eye, you can truly live from that perspective of bliss. If you're living fully in love with yourself, in love with the environment, in love with all that is, in love and acceptance, and taking full responsibility, when you're living from that space, you can create more and more possibilities for you and everyone around you. You're energized. And I also feel that way for the third eye, that when you're in the space of seeing as Source sees or God sees, I think of it as looking at a carpet, and you can see the individual threads in that carpet, and you can see the big picture. That's what it's like to live in the space of, and not mistake yourself for any of the threads, but to see movement or flow in the threads. Tyler, go ahead for.
I've also seen like this art that like they like have all these different pieces of like cotton, and they put it on like a blank piece of paper, and when they're all together they look like a picture.
So much like that, yes, you can see the individual cotton balls and the big picture that those cotton balls form. And so I'd love for you to describe what you experience there.
What I experience where? When I'm in the unbounded awareness?
In the unbounded awareness.
Well, the unbounded awareness is an experience of wholeness and oneness. It's an experience of deep relaxation, complete relaxation, perfect relaxation. It's an experience of perfection. And if you haven't experienced perfection, then you don't know what it is. But once you have the experience of it, you know exactly what it is. It's an experience of absolute oneness, absolute fullness. You do not feel any need when you're in that state. You do not feel any desire when you're in that state. You're in a state of complete unbounded awareness, which is perfect stillness, perfect wholeness. It's a state of feeling that there is nothing else. There's nothing that you need. There's nothing else other than that completion, that feeling of perfection, of bliss. Bliss is different from love. Bliss is a state of perfection. It's a state of infinite joy. It's not the state of a need. There's no need in that state. In the Upanishads, they say it is one and one only. It is one without a second. So when you're experiencing that oneness, it's unmistakable. There is no duality. There's no second. There's no second, meaning it's not two. It's only one. So when you're experiencing the oneness, the wholeness of being, it is perfect and complete.
It's so beautiful. And baby, you've been in that space. Greg, both of us have, and I believe our kids have too. And our kids don't yet have the language for it to describe it. But
it's hard to describe it. I mean, I was struggling right then.
Right.
Try to explain it.
Because there's
there aren't words for it, really.
Words for it. And when you're there, the experience of that fullness is... And I experience it as flow. I experience it as a rush of flow. And I draw from that area quite often. And when I say draw from it, I mean I experience it in my physical body. I pull it in and ground it into the areas as well. So it's not just an abstract, it's throughout. And baby, when you were in India and you were meditating, because I'd love for there to be more descriptions of this oneness.
Well, I know that if someone was looking at me from the outside, they'd think I'd need psychiatric help. That's for sure. No, but because it's such a... I remember when I first returned from India on that spiritual quest I was on, it was deep bliss. It was deep. There was... like a not wanting to come back into this experience of the hustle of the appointments, of the calendar, of the schedule. And so that is I can see how someone who's stumbled upon that without the background or without the guide, it's very disorienting, and it can be. And then if others are interacting with you, they can, you've broken, you need professional help. Something's off here. But it's so that would be the key then, is to how do we make guides more available for people who are going through these experiences? I'm sure there's more and more, so that there is an there can be someone to anchor to as you're out there in the beyond to help you come back into this experience, because we have to come back to
it's so beautiful. What I heard you say is when you got back from India, people would have diagnosed you as mentally ill back then.
Yes.
Today,
yeah.
do you feel like people would diagnose you as mentally ill?
If I was acting that way, maybe so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
want to make sure that we're...
Yeah, it was...
We are miracle makers, and we share our lives so transparently, because Miracle Maker at home or Miracle Maker wherever you're listening to this, we have quite busy practices serving our community, and we make it to the best of our ability. The max that we can give, we give to our community the best. Like Dr. Susan, meeting you and having time with you, even at the breakfast that we shared one day.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait for you to be on the show with us. And it's taken us this long to make sure. And it's so beautiful that you have this beautiful book now, The Third Eye, Awakening Your Third Eye, which is such a gift to give anyone, so they have something in writing even to anchor to as they're going through these processes. Yay. Tyler, go ahead, baby. What did you want to share?
It seems like when you guys met each other, it was kind of like a click.
It was. We did click. It's true. And when Daddy and I met too, it was one of those clicks. And for you at home, Miracle Makers, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Also, when the teacher is ready, the student appears. And I have a personal belief that you should always be working with someone that has already accomplished in the area that you're looking to accomplish in. So if you want a relationship that's wonderful, work with a couple or a person that's in a relationship that's wonderful. If you want the psychic abilities that higher perspective, higher consciousness, and to understand it, work with someone who's really successful in that area. So I always have someone that I'm working with that has already accomplished in that area. Then I always have students, someone that it's see one, do one, teach one. It's a surgical principle, but you learn from the teacher, then you're putting it into practice in your own life, and then you're teaching it and gifting it forward. And so we work much of what we do. That's why we always have classes or courses or something that is part of our world, seeing one, doing one, and then teaching one. And Dr. Susan, we're so glad you're here. We want to make sure we've only got a couple minutes left. So we want you to share as much for the audience, how to reach you, anything else that you'd want to share that we haven't been able to share.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have a website. It's drsusan.org, drsusan.org. And also, I have another website, divinetravels.com. That's DIVINETRAVELS.com. And on drsusan.org, you can find out about my books. You can read the first chapter of almost all my books on that website. You can listen to radio interviews and see videos and learn a lot just on the website. Also, divinetravels.com. That's my travel site. And what I do is put together tours and retreats to sacred destinations. And also I produce seminars at sea, cruise ship seminars with really famous speakers and famous teachers, spiritual teachers. So a lot of that is going on all the time. And you can check that out online.
That is so beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Susan. And drsusan.org is your primary website with that. Mm-hmm. And oh my gosh, guys, Thank you so much, Tyler. Thank you for being on the show. Any quick words for the Miracle Makers before we sign off for Dr. Susan?
You're welcome for being on the show.
Well, thank you.
Yay, baby.
All of this is so critical because people are as we go through these connecting with other people. People are in transition right now. They're looking for answers. They're looking for a way to ground because there's so much turbulence right now in society. So I'm so glad we had you on today so you could share. A lot of the stuff is you are offering grounding in all of your work and in what you're doing. So thank you for offering that.
And that people should memorize and practice that self-authority affirmation.
Yes, I like that one.
For that purpose.
Thank you.
It will help you get out of any kind of situation where you're feeling just off kilter.
Yes.
It will immediately put you back to center.
Thank you,
Perfect.
Miracle
Thank you,
Makers.
thank you.
The past is history, the future mystery. This moment is the gift. Every second we're together. The past is history, the future mystery. This moment is the gift. Every second.
Every second that we're together, Miracle Makers, is a gift. And it's Dr. Sarah Larsen, Greg Larsen, and Tyler Larsen in the studio for you. Woo! We are bringing to you she is such a bright light in the world. She is someone that I've met and fallen in love with. I met her at Conscious Life Expo. Greg met her the first year and was so in love with her, said, we've got to bring Susan Shumsky on. We love her so much. Greg met you the first year. And then we met again the second year, and we've been wanting to get you on the show. And it's such a pleasure for us to have you, Susan. Welcome to Miracle Makers.
Thank you so much. It's my great pleasure to be here with you.
Susan, there's so much about you that I could share. You've been doing the spiritual, the grounding work, the humanitarian work, all of what the law of attraction work, the secret work. We could label it in so many ways because in modern times, there's so many different ways it's being labeled now. You've been doing this for many years. I would say since a child. This has been your primary focus. You've written several books. You've been a best-selling author. You've done so much. And reading your bio would take the whole time for us. I would love for you to highlight so beautifully about yourself, just a little bit about the beginning of your journey. And the world has advanced to where you started out is a good way for me to say that, is you came in with such a high awareness and began sharing it out there. And that was your primary goal early on. And so I'd love for you to tell us about yourself, darling.
I've been practicing spiritual disciplines for 50 years. Yes, I really am 69 years old for those who are calculating.
Wow.
And I spent 22 years in the ashram of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He was the guru of the Beatles and the guru of Deepak Chopra. And continued in my spiritual studies after I left his ashram. I've written 14 books. I have 14 books in print. And I teach spiritual disciplines such as meditation, prayer, healing, spiritual healing, and so on.
It's so beautiful. Tyler